Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of AACRAO's Credential Chats. Really excited to be joined this week by Renée Kamauf. She is the Deputy University Registrar at Yale College, which is a part of Yale University. Renée, thank you so much for being with us this week.
Thanks, Noah.
We're really excited to preview. Several hundred of us will be converging on New Orleans in a few weeks for the Convergence Conference being co-presented by AACRAO and AACRAO. And you are going to be, leading one of the learning and sharing sessions there that deals all about governance. And so really appreciate you joining us this week as a bit of a preview for those of us who are going and filling us in for our colleagues who are not going to be able to be there about what you have to share about governance. But before you dive into the learning that you can share with us, I was hoping you could just tell us a little bit about how you personally and in your role as the Deputy University Registrar got involved in the governance leadership at Yale College.
Sure. So our office initially became involved in the governance process within Yale College when we were being asked questions about reporting and how students are progressing through their majors. And since we ultimately published the catalog or the bulletin, we were asked to advise about historical practices in certain majors. And then at some point, it made sense for us to join the committee and provide that information directly to the committee instead of kind of a roundabout way. So right now there's two members of the registrar's office, including myself, who serve on what's called the Committee on Majors, where we review current majors and consider any proposals for new majors or undergraduate certificates. So this is helpful for the committee because we're able to pull data on how students in certain programs are navigating the curriculum, what requirements are happening, how many students are actually participating in those particular programs, and provide that to the committee to help them determine what curricular offerings should be approved going forward.
And I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but it sounds almost like um, you're providing great and necessary leadership from the Office of the Registrar for this, and for all of this new razzle dazzle, things that are different with and brand new with micro-credentials that Yale, did not necessarily see a need to spin up whole new governance structures, that this is, falling within what we're already doing.
Yeah, correct. So the micro-credentials is kind of like a happy accident. So students had wanted to have minors, which have not been offered at Yale. And the committee, this is before my time on the committee, but the committee did a big analysis and ultimately came up with the proposal of offering undergraduate certificates instead of minors. And these have really just exploded in popularity. And now we think of them as micro-credentials or certificates, but they were very similar to minors. And our office really advised on best practices, how we could have these included in the transcript, but they follow the same governance structure as an undergraduate major. So that format and that structure was already established, and these just kind of fit right into that established governance structure.
And I imagine that, like a lot of us, different units around campus have very specific kind of touch points with the Office of the Registrar. And it sounds like maybe part of your involvement in this committee at Yale was a chance for stakeholders from kind of broad constituencies within undergraduate ed to have a maybe sort of a different sort of interaction relationship with the Office of the Registrar and see you in a bit of a different light.
Yeah, so we do a lot of my colleague who is presenting with me at Convergence does a lot of work with um, the director of undergraduate studies or the certificate directors drafting how their curriculum is going to appear in the bulletin. And that's really what we consider, the official record of the program. And so there's a lot of back and forth, and it's a collaborative relationship with, you may have a spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet needs to be translated into a narrative format. So we really try to be a resource to the faculty And someone who they can approach when they have questions at the very beginning instead of at the very end.
You know, you touched on something, Renee, there that I think might be a new kind of light bulb to a lot of us, that I don't think in our all of the credential chats we've had come up very much, is kind of that just comms approach of just, okay, there's part of governance is not just deciding what things are, but how we describe them.
Yeah, exactly. So the certificates is the wording of the certificate was a big thing. It was a very intentional that this is interdisciplinary. This is not going to be a major light. It's really something that's specifically crafted to be at an intersection of disciplines. And that wording, we had to figure out how to put that on the transcript and how to include it in our student information system, which was a challenge. But just because there was an intentional choice between the word certificate, we had to honor what the faculty and the governance process decided.
And something that might be helpful, you've mentioned a couple of different stakeholders there. Do you mind kind of just filling in for folks, just what, who's involved in these governance decisions with the committee, and as well as just, I guess, where does the committee itself fall in, when it comes to setting versus recommending governance?
Yeah. So the committee on majors is a Yale College committee. So this is all of the undergraduate students within Yale University. So all the students who are undergraduates fall within Yale College, and the college itself is the one who is sponsoring the committee. So the committee is chaired by a faculty member, and the secretary of the committee is typically a residential college dean who works a lot with advising students. Um, Other members of the committee include faculty from multiple disciplines, members of the registrar's office, members of Yale summer session to make sure that we have summer offerings to accompany the majors as well. And then ultimately the decisions of the committee go to the vote of the full faculty within Yale College for their approval. And then if approved, the policies typically go into effect the following academic year.
And I'm curious, it sounds like you maybe have kind of a unique or relatively unique opportunity in the driving forces behind this whole conversation at Yale. It sounds like really started with students saying, with learner voice saying, this is what we want. That this was not coming from a place of perhaps a new mandate for net new revenue or something like that. That this was responding to students. Do you feel like that impacted the approach to governance in any ways that are worth sort of reflecting on?
Yeah, I think, it certainly made it more pressing that the students were asking for this. And I would say that students are still asking for it. Our student governing body has a list of ideal certificates that we would offer next. So they have, I think last year they had about 10 or so certificates that they want to see happen. From fine arts to geography, things that we don't offer, as a major itself. Um, so it's been really special. So it's kind of nice to see that the students have a voice in bringing issues to the faculty, and then ultimately the faculty do their work on the committee and meet with one another. But I think the conversation would have happened if it weren't for students expressing their voice in this way.
That is, I know I'm just, my mind is just being blown left and right here today. That is really cool. And we talk so much about centering, learners and making sure that we're really prioritizing them and their needs, but to actually tangibly be reacting to what they're saying is a need is really cool. I'm also curious, within the governance, if you could maybe share just some of the specifics of what that looks like, for example, I'm guessing the micro-credential or certificates in this case is not necessarily an abracadabra magic word to circumvent governance and more quickly get new courses approved. So maybe you could just kind of share specifically of how you're handling that at Yale.
Yeah, so a new certificate has to be sponsored by more than one department because they're all interdisciplinary. Or we also offer advanced language certificates. So those are certificates in which there are more, 4 more advanced languages. So we would consider like French 5 or higher would be offered. So there's multiple different approaches in that way. And then the governance process. And then the goal is to have 12 or more existing courses that would fulfill the requirements. So the courses are 4 to 5 courses, fulfill a certificate, and there has to already be like 12 options that exist in the curriculum that would apply. So it's not trying to create a whole new plethora of courses. It's just trying to use really from the existing curriculum so that students can leverage their interests in these areas.
So, I mean, we have colleagues who may be used to some situations where a faculty member maybe got really excited about proposing something new within their department or their school or college that, maybe weren't getting the kind of support they wanted and maybe view, this fancy credential innovation is a way of, mom said, no, let me ask dad, or dad said, no, let me ask mom. Where I'm hearing that you're very much playing within the realm of things that are already existing, that you have these confines of it needs to be interdisciplinary, it needs to be courses that have already been approved. So this is not just independent of, but actually sort of in order of operations after course proposal.
Exactly. And the goal initially was that this would be revenue neutral so that there would be no additional staff needed, no additional resources in terms of administrative support. That was at least the goal. Right now, there are some certificates that have hundreds of students, so that work is falling to someone. But the goal at least was there will be no extra work needed because the courses already exist and the students are already taking the courses. And certainly the certificate courses, the existence of them being associated with that certificate have generated larger enrollments in those courses as well.
Okay, so faculty are seeing a tangible benefit of more seats being filled, which is probably well received.
Yeah,
And then when
certainly.
you say keeping track of, just in case different people have different viewpoints on that, and don't feel a need to necessarily name any specific vendors or anything, but is that everything from knowing who declares for or enrolls in or applies to a micro or to a new certificate program, to knowing their milestones and progress within, and then being able to report out and having
Exactly. And, making sure that appropriate courses are offered each term, to make sure that the students who are part of the certificate can remain on track to complete it before they graduate.
and for people, the temperature may have just gone up in the room for certain audience members. Would you say that's falling on someone? Is that typically going to be in the office of the registrar if that's where scheduling is happening? And
So there's work, and certainly there is work in the registrar's office, but then there's also work at the departmental level too, who these are interdisciplinary programs, but the faculty who's in charge typically resides in a department, and the work, the administrative work does fall with someone within that department. In some cases, some certificates have hired administrative staff to specifically support the certificate. But the initial goal was that this would be revenue neutral, and there wouldn't be an additional burden, a financial burden to those programs offering the certificate.
very cool. And especially if we're able to actually align the outcomes with our intentions there. I guess one final clarifying question that some people might be wondering is, at Yale, are you transcripting this? And clearly, if they're enrolled in 4 credit courses, those courses are appearing on the transcript. Is there also recognition on the transcript that these courses powers combined
Yes.
are adding up to that certificate?
Yeah, so we do include them on the transcript upon graduation. So we don't award the certificate until they earn their bachelor's degree. But at that point, we would indicate it on the transcript as earned as well.
And I guess was that decision part of that governance committee, or
It
was that
was.
something out of the office of the registrar?
Yeah, so that was part of the governance process.
And I guess, with our kind of final 20, 30 seconds, are there any other sort of governance considerations that people might not have right away gone to, like you just mentioned, of when will we recognize this? You know, are we doing it right when it happens or upon graduation? You know, were there any other another consideration or two that the committee handled that are worth naming?
I would just say, like, as a member of the registrar's office, try to be in the conversation and show your worth. Make sure that you are able to share what our offices can provide in terms of like data, few past outcomes of students, past outcomes of students in a particular major or program. That's really been helpful because I think these questions have been asked, but if we don't have the answers, or the assumptions were made, you know, of like, oh,
Mm.
every student in this major does this path or you know, path B. But if we have the data, if we have the outcomes, I think that really brings um, more value to the conversations that we're able to provide.
That is awesome. A great way to end there on just championing why the Office of the Registrar can be such a valuable partner and contributor and collaborator in these conversations. Renee Kamauf, Deputy University Registrar at Yale College, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Have a badge-worthy week, everybody. Bye-bye.